Evening, folks, and welcome to the City Council work session for October 7th, 2019. The meeting is hereby called to order. Roll call, please, Sue.
Mr. Mayor, all present, duly noted.
Okay, council agenda and meeting. Anything on the agenda you'd like to discuss or take off consent calendar or any of the above? Hearing none. All right, let's move on. Council business items. Anything that is not on the agenda, folks? Again, hearing none. How's about Karn Hoffman and the Systems Development Charge presentation? Good evening, Karn.
So tonight's presentation is just an informational thing about system development charges. I know it's come up a couple different times about how they're calculated, why they're calculated, and those types of things. So I just thought I would give a brief introduction to them. Feel free to ask questions. If you want more information, I can either answer tonight. Doug's got some pretty good information, or we can come back if you need more. We will be coming back to the council next year sometime, probably with updated SDCs. Again, we've talked about it before, but as the Riverfront Master Plan finished up, we'll be updating all of the other master plans, and so that will probably result in a change in SDCs, or at least a change in the project list. We'll get to that. So system development charges are one-time fees that are charged on new development, certain types of redevelopment, and or a change in use. And it helps pay for existing capacity that we already have in the system, and then planned infrastructure additional needs that we may have. It's one one method of financing infrastructure to respond to growth and us growing. So there's specific language in the Oregon revised statutes that dictate what we can and can't do with SDCs, what they can be levied for. I won't read this to you because you guys are capable of doing that. One thing to note, SDCs are not to be used for ongoing maintenance or projects. They have to be used for capital projects themselves. One-time deals. Cities must establish SDCs by ordinance or resolution. The methodology must provide a credit for qualified capital projects. In other words, if the developer actually builds a project that's on the list, they can get credit for that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Qualified improvements must be in an adopted plan. The methodology must be adopted through a public process, and it has to set up a review procedure through anyone can challenge that methodology and expenditure of the SDC revenue for that matter. So SDC components and costs. There's three main costs here: reimbursement fees, improvement fees, compliance costs. Compliance costs are easy. Those are the staff admin stuff, to calculate what the SDC is, to maintain and do the financial reports, like what finance does, those types of things, and some master planning. Reimbursement fees are the cost of the existing project. So in other words, when we build an 8-inch water line, there's an additional capacity in there. Normally you only need 4 inches or whatever. So there's an additional 4 inches that's available, but somebody should pay for it. So the reimbursement fee is for that additional 4 inches that gets constructed as part of that, to make sense for that. So again, it's related to available capacity, and it doesn't include any grants or contributions that we may have gotten. So if we got a grant to build an 8-inch water line, you can't then use that 8-inch water line to calculate part of this fee. So you have to take that off the top. Improvement fees are projects that are included on the adopted list, and they're related to capacity for growth. One thing is, right now, the way our methodology is set up, it's for projects all over the city, and the SDC gets spread out over any development anywhere within the city. We can use that money on any project within the city anywhere. It's not earmarked to a specific area. Now, there's some places that you can set aside. So say we had an urban growth boundary area that we were specifically adding in, and it was gonna require a lot of infrastructure to be added on. We could set up a special SDC for just that location, so any development that came in there would pay a separate SDC different than what the rest of the city has. That doesn't happen very often because what that can do is inhibit development in that area, right? If I have to pay double in that area, am I gonna go there or not, you know? So there's things we should look at if we were gonna go down that avenue. I know several jurisdictions that have looked at it, Tualatin being one, they decided not to on the area between Tualatin and Wilsonville. Although Hillsborough, when they added all that South Hillsborough in, does have a separate SDC for that. So, you know, there's good and bad for that, and that would be something if the council wanted to look down that path, we would have to look at it and make a determination based on that. But obviously, if you spread it over everything, the cost comes down, right? So the adopted plan. So prior, again, to establishing the SDC, you have to have a plan. And generally, it's done through the master planning process. In that master planning, there's a list of projects that get adopted in those plans. And that's what the SDCs are based off of, is that list. And that master plan includes all the projects that we plan to, the revenues from any improvement fees, and the estimated cost, timing, and percentage of cost to be funded by those fees. Does that make sense? You know, that was something that the mayor had indicated, that he
Yeah.
realized that the master plans is what gives us the SDCs.
Yeah, if I can underscore that, because therefore, anything that we put into a master plan sets the numbers for how it's distributed among the community. So it's vitally important that those plans are pretty spot on for what we think is gonna happen, right? So just to underscore that, yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that you want to update these plans pretty regularly,
Right.
you know, because things happen. You know, before we did the last round of updates, the last wastewater master plan in particular was from 2007. At that point, everybody thought growth was booming, everything, and then obviously the recession hit in 2008, 2009, and nothing had happened. And so the SDCs were all based on that. One thing to note, that other than the transportation SDC, all of the other SDCs went down in this last master planning process. So credits. You know, this one comes up a lot. Credits are given basically for two reasons. One, previous use. So say there's an existing house, you tear down the house and you build an office building. You get credit for the amount of use that was already in that house, if that makes sense. And that gets subtracted off whatever they would pay for the new use. Or if there was a different, say a commercial building and there was already a restaurant in that building, the restaurant went away and a store went in, you would get credit for that previous restaurant that would offset what you would have to pay for the new use, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if I could underscore that one as well, because we did hear, particularly with downtown businesses, that if you replace a restaurant with a restaurant, the chances are your impact will not be as great because of the credits. But if you change a photography studio into a bar and grill, for instance, then it's different. Okay, just as long as that's clear to random examples, just random.
Exactly. And again, the SDCs are based on the impact of the system, right? So obviously, transportation in particular, a restaurant has a way bigger impact on the transportation system than a photography studio would. So that's where that comes from. And then the other way you get a credit is if you construct what's called a qualified improvement. And there are really three things that set what that qualified improvement is. It has to be required as a condition of the development. So when the land use decision is written, it has to be a requirement of that decision. It has to be identified in one of these plans as a project, as a system development charge project. And then it has to be not located on or contiguous to a property. So in other words, it can't be what they would be required to do. So everybody's required to do a half street improvement, say. sidewalk, curb and gutter, you know, to build out the street. But say we require them to build the street, you know, next door. They have to build all of that out, or they have to add turn lanes or something like that. And it's not necessary for their development, but it may be necessary for future development. That's where they would get the credit in the difference.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
We don't have buttons, so I don't.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
So we can't give credits for things like, if somebody added a public restroom, like that's something that we've identified we wanted, but it's not necessarily a qualified public improvement.
Correct.
Okay, or like affordable housing, these types of
Correct.
things.
So, here's just what Newberg's SDCs are. This is for a single-family resident and then a quality restaurant. And assume there's some big assumptions based in here, so know that, so it's a 2,000 square foot restaurant, and same with the residents. So here's your fees. The city totals are kind of in that middle. And then we added on the school, construction excise tax and CPRD, which we don't have any control over, to let you know. So a single family residence in Newberg would come in and pay a little over $28,000 in SDCs. And then a quality restaurant, assuming 2,000 square feet, 65,000 square feet. So SDC's comparison between us and some other nearby jurisdictions. What you'll see, obviously McMinnville is one we get compared to a lot. They are low. One thing to remember is that McMinnville Water and Light doesn't charge any SDCs. They're just, for those of you who don't know, they own a very large watershed in the Coast Range, and they actually subsidize a lot of their stuff through timber sales every year. They sell millions of dollars worth of timber, and that brings all of their costs down. So they don't require an SDC for water in McMinnville. So something to keep in mind. And again, it's the brownish, they're both kind of brown. The dark brown color is the single family residential, and then the kind of rust color, I guess, is the quality restaurant. Umber. There you go, I like it. I like it.
Spot on.
Word for the evening. Nice.
So just to kind of keep that, and again, that South Hillsborough one is that one I talked about where Hillsborough kind of carved that location off because of the amount of infrastructure. So you see that one is pretty high. So SDC waivers and or reductions. I know this has been come up. There are two that are existing that are allowed for, actually one, in the code. It's 2 are provided for low or moderate income single family residential projects for water and wastewater per year. So that's the only thing that we grant at this point for any waivers or reductions. Some potentials that have been talked about in past would be for downtown. So previous to 2007, downtown did not pay any transportation system development charges. And that changed when we did the updated transportation SDC, and they do pay now. So it did come up at one point, should we provide them with another reduction or a waiver? Another one that has been talked about quite a bit is affordable housing. Do we reduce SDCs for affordable housing? And again, it's a conversation that needs to be had. A couple things that obviously consequences to that is it reduces the amount of revenues, and or other people subsidize it. So you have two options if you want to keep your project list the way it is you either you reduce your revenues and you can't keep your project list as it is, or if you want to keep your project list, you spread that cost out that you've just taken from downtown onto everybody else. Those are really your options in that scenario. So something to keep in mind as we move forward and these questions come back. So some current projects. These are not all of them, obviously, but here are some current system development charge projects. Shale and water and wastewater extensions, East Crestview Drive, North Elliott Road, Bell Road West Pump Station, inflow and infiltration projects, and redundant water supply. Any questions? Thoughts? Can we come back in next year?
Next year is disturbing, because.
Stop. I have the projects on my list of things to do, so.
Elise?
The STC criteria,
Mhm.
I'm assuming that's based on some law.
Mhm.
Okay, so we can't just like say, oh, we want to add something to the criteria. So what law is that?
It's ORS,
Cited it? Okay.
Two
look
and
at it.
7, there it is.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This was very helpful.
It was,
Thank you.
yeah,
Good, I'm glad.
yes.
Anything else?
So if, the only other, I guess just, this is, maybe I'm belaboring the point, but the only way to actually reduce SDCs sort of community-wide is by reducing what's appearing in the master plans.
You don't have to reduce what's in the master plans, but what you have to say is that those projects are not gonna be constructed
In
within the next
X
20
period
years.
of time, 20-year horizon.
Mhm.
Okay.
And the other piece that you have to remember is if you do that, then if they're no longer eligible for SDC credit.
Right.
So if a
Right.
developer did come in and construct it, they wouldn't be able to get credit for it either, if it's not on that. So the master plans can have an adopted list. The council could say, okay, that's a great list, but we wanna reduce it by this amount, because that's all we think we're gonna be able to construct. And then that's what the SDC is based off of, based on the amount of growth associated with those projects. And then, because that's what the other piece of that puzzle is the amount of growth that is expected to come in that time frame. So again, if you shorten that list, you know, then you have less money, and again, then these projects aren't available for us to construct under SDCs and or for them to be creditable to a developer who constructs them.
The other thing is when you do set your SDC rates, when you go through the methodology process, there's about a 90-day to 120-day window how that all occurs. What you'll get out of that is the maximum rate, but that doesn't mean you as a council can't reduce that for other reasons.
Okay.
So you don't need to necessarily cut the list, you can just cut the rate, which will have the same impact, but
Right, okay. Okay, gotcha, Patrick.
So for example, during the wastewater master plan meetings we had last year, was that last year?
Yeah.
There was quite a debate about how high we wanted in a rain event, bids to get the manhole covers. Were you there for that?
Yep, yep.
And so then they came back with a price tag of, how much it would be. Then there was a robust discussion about, okay, if we do it this way, we're gonna have to raise SDCs this much. If we keep it more moderate, then it would be, so it was, it's really definitely kind of a push and pull on all this stuff. And that's why I always tell folks, if you can get on a master plan committee, keep that in mind. It's not just,
Yeah.
hey, we need golden streets. It's,
Yeah.
you have to balance it, or the fact your housing is gonna get, housing and commercial development are gonna get cost prohibitive real quick.
Yeah. And this, I mean, I think it comes to the same thing, yeah, it'd be nice to incentivize whatever it is we wanted, like say downtown improvement, as you mentioned, or affordable housing. But again, and we've had this discussion before, if you do that, it would be nice to have a way to backfill it so that you aren't distributing it to everyone else, that you've got another means to fund that waiver, that reduction, so. Anyway, cool, all right. Anything else, folks? All right, yeah, fine, thank you, very good, awesome, nice. All right, what about a city manager's report now? Can we do that now, you think, David, or?
we can't, I just happened to pull that out.
Did
just
you?
in
Looking
case.
at the time, yeah.
So, let me run through a few things. We did have, last week, we did have our open houses conducted by Walter and Associates for trying to gain some input into the selection process for the the real city manager that you'll be hiring, not the 41 sitting in this seat. That one, that process, I think we were lightly attended. I think there were some concerns about, how we got publicity out, probably valid concerns. It was a process that isn't typical to these recruitments. Nonetheless, we did also get quite a bit of anecdotal comments that were included, plus we also got a fair amount of email responses as well. So I think people largely had an opportunity to comment, and more importantly, they will have a meaningful opportunity to participate on December 15th when the open house occurs. That really is when people will be able to visit with candidates, and get a sense of them in the public setting, get their comments into the recruiter, so that so that can be shared with you for the following day for when you consider, your selection, your serious selection of the candidate. The profile, as I was talking to a couple people today about the profiles are great, but usually, when I look at these profiles, I look at the first and front page where all the pretty pictures are, say, is that a community that I'm gonna try and send a resume to so I can get a free trip? And secondly, I look down to the very bottom of the profile and say, what's that gonna pay anyway? So there's a lot of filler, and it's very interesting for some of us that are sort of geeky about that stuff, but by and large, folks are not gonna be too enticed nor too put off by what they see in the full body of the profile. So I think it's very thorough, and people can learn what they need to know in terms of the recruitment. A lot of the recruitment, of course, won't be off the profile, it'll be personal contacts, it'll be other job listing services. But anyway, the open houses I thought went pretty well. We had, the people that were there, I think, had a great opportunity to visit with the recruiter. And, when I was at a couple of those other counselors were at them, you were at them. So I think it was a good opportunity. Let's see, just moving down a quick list here. So, reminder, if you didn't see the email, if you want to see urban renewal in action this Thursday at 1 p.m., you can drive down to Independence, see the Independence Hotel. It's having its grand opening, and also you can see the adjacent work going on in the urban renewal location, their riverfront site. Of course, I take personal pride in that, but it is, I think it's a really well done project, and give you a little taste of what could be on a much smaller scale for what you've imagined, and will be coming to grips with here over the course of years to come. Anyway, it's open to you. We have 1 o'clock in Independence. I'd offer to give rides. It would be a one-way trip. I won't be coming back.
Are there hotel rooms on the other side of this new place for us who are going?
Oh, by the way, they do
There you
have
go.
currently an offer for anybody who wants to spend the night for $99 that day. So it could be kind of fun.
There you go.
So just give them a call. Give me a call, because there's some kind of password you're supposed to give them or something. I don't know what it is. Just call the hotel and tell them, I want the $99.
Yeah.
You emailed us.
Huh?
You emailed us. It's
I did, okay,
yeah.
good, okay, I was that thoughtful. Just a heads up, I'm gonna probably be appointing somebody internally. I haven't arm wrestled entirely, but I'm probably appoint somebody internally to be sort of the acting while I'm out of those times that I'm out of the office, just so there's a continuous accountability there. Just, I'm gonna ask whoever it is not to, overturn all my decisions, but somebody should sort of hold that seat and make sure that we have a acting city manager at all times. Particularly as we get closer to December, my time's gonna get a little bit more pinched, so we take a little bit more time off. We have, in your budget, you have set aside funds to purchase property, adjacent to the water treatment plant. We have in fact executed a purchase and sale agreement consistent with that budget. That will come back to you for your consideration, when we get into contract on that property. So I think at closing, I'm short of closing, that will come back to you for your review. So you will have a full official buy-in, but it is within the budget, and so if you have more questions about it, happy to talk to you about it. We can have a real estate session, executive session at some point if you'd like.
Is there, in discussion, are we going to talk about water rights at any time?
We are
in the
going to
future?
come back to you with a more
Okay.
full conversation about that as well. I think it all fits in with the sustainability plan that you're putting together for our water future. And so we're going to have a more meaningful discussion with you about that in the very near future. We had a pre-meeting on that today. You have an item that's passed out to you to get added to your agenda. We did come to terms with Lacey Digraph
Nice.
for the position of media community engagement specialist, so she will be beginning with us, I think, on November 1st. We'll bring her here for you to meet her. She's a highly energized individual, so I think you're gonna get somebody who's got a lot of good experience. Lives in McMinnville, has worked for McMinnville Economic Development, so definitely has some really great experience that we can use. And after some arm wrestling, internally, I decided to seat her outside my office, so nobody thought they had first dibs on, her time, because it looks like she's gonna be dragged in a number of directions. But, we all have work for us, so she'll be very busy. One other thing, and you'll get more information on, legal information on this later in the evening, but I thought I'd give you at least some of the public information, vis-a-vis the lawsuit that at this point in time, we have lost, last week. A couple follow-on actions that I think are important that we take, and that I'm going to, part of it I'll be coming to you, part of it which is go ahead and do. One of those, two of those are with respect to audit of our operations. We have an opportunity to, I've spoken with our insurers. They will conduct a human resource audit of our operations. That's at no cost to us as members, so we will do that. The other one is I have yet to contact them, but I will be. They come highly recommended. Is the Center for Equity and Inclusion. I want to do a diversity and equity audit of our operations as well. I think that we took a pretty good meeting. We need to really kind of get a good look at that, to see where we stand with those values that are important to all of us. Along the same lines, you previously provided me approval to look for somebody, a community engagement person for the Latino community. I want to expand that and we have the budget to do so, so I'll come to you later for formal approval, but I want to expand that to a full-time diversity, equity, inclusion professional. I think it's warranted, and it's something, again, it's a positive response to a bad showing that we had. So I think we just need to do that, and I think it's important for us internally, externally. So that said, we will be pursuing that, and I'll come to you for your formal ratification of that. So that's ongoing. Again, you'll have more information later this evening in executive session on the legal perspectives of the case.
All right, questions for David? Anyone? David, I have one. Were Jonathan Hodgkins and Travis Hyder, are they new hires then on this hire list? Have they moved or no?
Promotion.
They're promoted.
Promoted? Are they? Oh, well, congratulations to Jonathan
Yeah.
Hodgkins and Travis Hyder, and welcome, and Brittany. Brittany has moved to a full-time, Brittany Jeffries.
Yeah.
And then Lacey Drygraph, welcome to the city of Newberg if you're listening in at home.
No, point of order, you haven't voted on it yet.
Oh, we have not.
This is
Thank you, Sue, yes.
This is replacing the one that's in the
Yeah.
consent agenda. It's
Gotcha.
just The
And we'll put
addition
it-
of
that's still
Lacey
consent.
involved.
But
So-
by the time those individuals see this, they will have voted.
Yeah, they will, so,
This is a
hold,
delayed
Lacey,
posting
hold on
by
for
video.
a couple of minutes and we'll be back to you and the rest. So, all right. Anything else? What about, do we have anything on issue tracker that you want us to pay attention to?
Is there anything on there that you have a particular?
Have you all looked, take a look at that?
I can-
Sure,
I
I'll
can
put it
put
around
it
you.
on.
I'm gonna break this, I'm gonna break it down.
There
Nothing
was
on Sandy Road?
one we
Okay.
added.
Let me pull it up on the screen.
Yeah, let's look up when we're moving along. Check.
I actually do have something on the issue tracker.
Okay.
Just a little update because the cultural district board met and on the Christmas tree lighting.
Okay, so it's up there on the
Elected
screen.
row.
to just volunteer. No, they're doing great. They've got it handled.
Yay.
The only,
Yay.
yes, for sure. The two things that came up for them were that they wanted to know how or why or if CPRD is involved or if they need to be. And then who is going to be the takedown cleanup crew. Those were their two questions that I didn't have an answer to.
How about
What about them?
And here's Jay.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
I'm Jay Bush, Law Enforcement Director. Question number one, as CPRD is involved, we are meeting with the Director of the Cultural Center two separate, we have a meeting with a bunch of us. He couldn't make that meeting, so we're meeting with him separately and going through some items with what they're planning and doing. We're obviously gonna take the tree and put it in their well, right? So we're talking about all that. And then what was your second question?
Who is doing the takedown cleanup?
Yeah, so that's Public Works Maintenance, that will go out there and we get the lights off the tree, and then my understanding is they take a chainsaw. I've never stood there and witnessed it, but they drop the tree. I mean, you raise it up, PG puts it up, but then we take it down.
If you need help,
You got your
I
own
would be
chainsaws?
happy, yes.
Okay, nice.
I've never used one, but.
No, 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 small detail, don't worry, that's fine.
Thank you.
And then
I
one
can get
one
that
other
one.
thing, Russ Thomas is looking around the community, and you might think of somebody that would be interested in, the community needs to be sort of the organizer, and there needs to be a lot of participants. Rather than the city being the organizer, it makes a lot more sense if there's a group in the community that can run this event, and then there's a lot of participants. We already have a lot of people doing things, but it's better in that way, like the Old Fashioned Festival. So Russ is.
Two Rotary clubs should take it on as a joint project.
Yes.
There you go.
Shouldn't they?
Bring that up.
Gee.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Jay.
Mayor, I have a couple.
Yes, yes, David.
So a couple different things. I think you'll notice that we have a camera going tonight, so again, IT's done a great job of getting that lined up for us. That'll be, I don't believe we're live streaming tonight, but we will be, that'll go up on YouTube, correct?
Eventually, yes.
Eventually. We will or have secured our own, YouTube channel, so we'll be broadcasting all sorts of interesting stuff on there.
Yes.
Wow.
And secondly, we're not a confirmation yet, but Sue will be doing a walkthrough of the public safety building. We're moving quickly on that, and hopefully we'll be back in by November. But in the meantime, I think Sue and Will and whoever else is involved, I think this layout's very good.
Yeah, this
Yes,
is
I
nice.
agree.
Thank you, This is Will, wherever you might be, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate your patience.
I do have one thing on
Yes,
Turkey Tracker.
please.
So, in regards to the, when Patty McIntyre came and presented on, or made public comment on the, houseless family living in their car outside the library, Will, see him
He is about, he was having dinner with his wife.
He's alive, yeah. So he was, with him and the community wellness collective got together, and so now the library has access to all of our resources. They were gonna put together something, and that was why that was made. So, just a plug too, if there's anyone in the community that's looking for resources, I think it's just gonna take time to remind people that there's an updated resource list on the website, and we'll provide free guides for them. So I think I'm gonna try to get some to City Hall too.
So as you see up there, I've been updating that, and there are also a physical display next to the reference desk, he told me. And they've already selected, the last issue tracker you got was different people from GFU that selected the resources. So now this lady, GFU Professor Erin Johnson, is actually reviewing the resources to see if they need to add more or, display them differently or whatever, so. Anyway, that's what I'm.
Cool.
Yes, awesome.
Love it.
Just, I guess, sort of a follow-on to the homeless question. I may have said this before, so if I did, I apologize for being redundant. But we received a complaint from a business owner over behind the drive-in theater. Right, I just want to praise Public Works because the folks came out and resolved it real quickly. The difficulty, of course, it was some folks camping behind the drive-in. The problem, of course, is then what happens to these folks. So now that we've got, resources that people can access, that makes it feel a lot better. But when we were at the LOC conference this past week, there was a presentation, I mentioned this to somebody recently, but they, from the mayor of Gresham was talking about what they've done because they had a tremendous problem. Everyone was being sort of pushed out of Portland to Gresham. And they've done quite a bit, but it was compassionate enforcement is what they called it. So it's great to enforce, as long as you have some kind of compassion for the people that are being moved along. So I think that's what this is, and I think that's fantastic.
And I'll also give a plug to the police department because we've met a few times and are gonna continue to meet around getting connected to resources since they're the ones a lot of times on the front lines.
Yep.
Yeah, so,
And experiencing this, so.
okay.
Can I have something to add to the whole?
Sure, please.
So we met, well,
Oh, yeah.
we weren't able to, the emergency shelter is going to
Right,
reopen.
Right, saw that.
Some people did take it over finally, and they're all set to go, and they're just looking for volunteers, and they'll be up and running very soon. Where's the location? Zion.
It'll be
Little
Zion.
Saints,
It'll be
yes.
Zion.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
all right, so, for all those listening at home, if you're looking to volunteer, we've got a place for you, so, anyway. All right, so on that, we've got a couple more minutes. How's about any other committee reports? Anything else on the LOC, Patrick or David?
Yeah, I thought it was a great event. I think Ben is certainly, you know, I mean, the meeting venue is great. I think it's, you know, a little nicer than some of the venues that we've gone to. It's tough. The league, you know, I've been involved in the league for a lot of years. I've been on their board and whatever, and it's always a challenge for them to find that, you know, the right venue in the state that, you know, one is big enough, and two, obviously meets the budgets of, you know, our member cities. So I thought the Ben venue was a pretty nice one. I thought it was also one of the better training programs they've had in a lot of years. You know, they've really stepped up the game there. There, you know, it's challenging. They went through a lot of changes, and not the least of which is the staff changes. They've lost about half their staff, and you know, not for any particular reason, they just have, and so they've gone through a lot of turnover. So keep them on top of that. But they put together a real nice training program. They do look to us to help with that. So to the extent that if you're, you know, when we talk about volunteer opportunities, league is always looking for help for people that want to get on their planning committees to help with those annual meeting agendas. And they start that early, shortly after they finish the annual conference. They start up again. But I think it was good quality speakers, good presenters. The keynote was the guy from Alberta on the firefighters, fire chief. Oh my God, that was special. It's really special.
Yeah, and if you guys didn't know, I did not know about this story, but anyway, I can sort of summarize it. So I don't know if you recall, there was a, Linda, you heard the same story at lunch, so I'm sorry, I'll do it again. But anyway, so he was the fire chief, right, in a town north of Calgary in Alberta, and had a huge forest fire, right? And basically, a city of 80,000 was surrounded by fire. And they had only one route in, one route out, and sort of mobilized 80,000 people and got them all out of there with not a single fatality. And, you know, off they went, and what did he say, 25% of the city burnt to the ground. So it was,
Gosh, it gives me chills.
yeah, amazing, right? And he was great. He was a fantastic speaker.
You turn the highways going north and south into one ways north,
Yeah.
one way
Right.
south. It's just, you're not coming back in, you're just leaving.
You're leaving, you're gone.
Wow.
You're 20 minutes, you're out of here. So it was an amazing story, so.
It was their biggest fire in Canadian history.
All right, council committee reports. Anything else you'd like to report out on your various activities outside of council?
I could talk about, I had the opportunity to attend the 150-year anniversary of the Newberg Post Office this weekend. I didn't know what to expect, but there were quite a few people there, all descended from the line of the first postmaster and postmistress. So the guest of honor was Elton Brusher, who was 101 years old, and he came out for it. His daughter did food for people, and it was a lovely afternoon. We had perfect weather. It was held at the grave sites of the Bruchers, the original postmaster and postmistress, and it was really fun. So if you ever have the opportunity to meet the historian of the Pioneer Cemetery, he will talk your ear off,
Yeah.
but he has so much information about, I mean, the history of Newberg and just all kinds of stuff. So it was really, really a fun occasion, and it was interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great. Anyone else?
You know,
Patrick.
bypass, I'm gonna stop.
Sure, give us some bypass up here.
At League of Oregon Cities, I made it a mission to look for other folks on the coast and surrounding the bypass, North Marion County, to make connections with them, and use our letter as a template. So handed out a number of those. Talked to a lady from, counselor from Depot Bay, who was pretty excited about getting involved, so we'll see if she does it. Then they also sent a contingency, the bypass committee sent a contingency to the Oregon Transportation Committee meeting that was in the Dalles. I wanted to go, but work, couldn't break away from that. And I guess that went really well. A lot of people are new on that, and so getting them educated has been great. And there's going to be a number of one-on-one meetings, and then later this month we have another bypass meeting, and I'll have more information. So there you go.
All right, anyone else? Anything else? Let's see, so just on the Mid-Willamette Valley COG, on transportation, particularly McKay Road came up, and Commissioner Brentano was there saying he's pushing as best he can to get something to get reformed with McKay Road and the exchange there. So we'll keep, I told him, as you would, same thing, any help we can provide, we're happy to do it. Let's see, others, Newberg Downtown Coalition. So as I think I mentioned last meeting, they are trying to sort of reinvent and reinvigorate themselves. So Molly Olson has joined to be, to be the executive director, I guess she said, for at least a period of a year. And then Britta, forgetting her last name. Stewart, thank you. Britta Stewart, who is doing the Hoover Minthorn House, has also joined as an event person for the Downtown Coalition. So they are trying to. Yeah, some folks that'll get some work done, I think, so that's cool. And they're looking for ways to show the value of being a member of the Downtown Coalition. And so that's really, I think, part of their mission. They need to raise some money as well, and they're working on that. But I think I'm encouraged by what they're attempting to do. So that may be somebody to think about the tree lighting in the future along with the Rodent clubs. So there we go. I think that's what I got at the moment. Anything else?
Yeah, one more.
Yep, please.
Well, they have started work on the rerouting of Wilsonville Road, so
Okay.
they've started knocking things down and mowing trees down.
Really?
Getting things, they got big equipment out there, so they've started.
Okay, cool. All right, anything else? If not, we will close the work session. Question for you, sir. If we were to acknowledge, to recognize your service now, would that be okay with you, or would you like to wait?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, in that case, if we could, get her done, get her.
What if you have more attendees?
Yeah, are people gonna, no?
Nah.
We'll eat all the cake.
Huh?
Yeah, there's a lot of cupcakes. There's gonna be a heck of a lot of cupcakes to eat. All right, so here we are. So as you all may know, as you all undoubtedly do know, our Commissioner Mike Corey is going to be leaving us after this evening's meeting, heading to Tualatin. So Mike was first elected in November of 2012, took office in January of 2013, and has served with distinction since then. And I guess those of us who sit in these seats maybe now have a better idea of what it takes to sit in these seats. So Mike, for all your years of service, we can't thank you enough. So thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so gather in, folks.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Gather in.
Like sorority pills.
Yeah, they really gone there.
At least I'm not pregnant.
That you know of.
Not possible. I'm gonna remember this picture for sure.
All right. Well, I just wanted to say that it has been a privilege to serve the city and the citizens of Newberg, and I've learned an awful lot from back then to now, and as all the new councilors, I'm sure, will experience the same thing. But you learn how city government works. It's not always like a business, like I was used to before I came onto the council. So, but it has been a privilege, and I think we accomplished a lot over the years. You know, we kept a balanced budget. We passed the TUF, which I think was a biggie. I think the bypass came about not because of me, but because of a coalition of folks that accomplished that project. And I see Newberg, you know, both past and future as a growing, vibrant city, just like we had a vision as a council. So I'm going to be excited to watch as Newberg does all that. And I'm leaving because my family wanted me to go. We'll put it this way, long story short, my wife inherited a place in Tualatin, so that's why we ended up in Tualatin. Tualatin's a nice little city too, but I'm going to miss Newberg. I've been here a lot of years. I was, you know, like, you know, I don't know, like 30, 25, 28 years. So I can only say we've had a good bunch of folks to work with, department heads, as well as employees of the city, and we've had just a good bunch. I guess one of the downsides was the city manager seems to keep changing, but hopefully this time we'll have a city manager that lasts.
You have a lot of people, a lot of experience.
Yeah, a lot of experience. So we'll, you know, I'll keep watching Newberg. I'll be in touch, and I'll certainly be doing things in Newberg in this area often.
So you'll lead the tree lighting, thank you.
Yay! All right, and I hear there's refreshments out there, and then we'll reconvene here back at 7 o'clock for the work session.
Business session.
Business session is what I meant to say. Thank you, Sue. The City Council business session for October 7th, 2019 is now called to order. A roll call, please, Sue.
Mr. Mayor, all present, duly noted.
Thank you. And now the Pledge of Allegiance. We've got multiple flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. The first item of business, and we will move things around a little bit. For those who weren't here during the work session, we did get a few other things done on the agenda. But let's start tonight with a presentation. We'll read, and let's see. So, this is a proclamation recognizing October 2019 as American Archives Month. Whereas archival collections document the history of our city, state, and nation, and whereas archival institutions collect, organize, preserve, and provide access to materials that document who we are as a community and as a people, and whereas municipal and community archives possess legal, administrative, fiscal, and historically significant records that shed light on the past and provide guidance for the future, and whereas municipal and community archival, I'm going to kill that word yet, professionals and volunteers diligently work to assist the people of the city in preserving the records of our individual and shared experiences. And whereas the city recorder, George Fox Archivist, and Newberg Historical Society endeavor to preserve this city's history, and today recommends the proclaiming of American Archives Month so that all historical materials may be appreciated and preserved. Now therefore it is proclaimed by the Mayor and City Council and on behalf of the citizens of the City of Newberg, Oregon, that we proclaim the month of October 2019 as American Archives Month. All right, in witness hereof. All righty, and there we go. All right. Yay. Hand you that. And thank you so much. And thank you to Sue and Rachel Thomas from George Fox. So thank you so much. All right, moving right along, I believe we're going to move item 10C, a citizen petition for climate change, to the next item on the docket. So, if we have speakers, we would love to hear from you all. All right, if you could just start with your name, that would be great, and we'll make sure that the recording is recording.
I'm 13 years old, the 8th grade at Newberg Middle School. I've been more and more worried about climate change and the effect on our future, and I was getting to a point where I was lying awake, running on sleep, and thinking about how scary that is, how it's going to affect me and other people I know. I saw some videos of Greta's youth movement, Fridays for Future campaign, and I realized I could do something instead of just worrying about it. It seems hopeless to just try to change things for the whole world. If I focused on changing things in my city, I thought I could make a bigger difference. I started talking to people about it, and I came up with some ideas and put it in a petition. And I think these are really sign came passing around with local youth. We got almost 100 signatures from kids at the local schools, and then we started an online petition for adults, which now has 137 signatures, the last time I checked. Which means we're really close to 250 signatures in just 2 weeks. Really quick. On Friday, September 25th, I gathered with about 60 other people at Francis Square in Washington City Hall, where Elizabeth Gamerai and Stephanie Finley they talked to us a little bit and received a petition on behalf of the city council. I'd like to read the petition now so everyone is aware of what's on it, everything you want. We, the undersigned citizens of Newberg, hereby demand the mayor, city council, and city manager declare a climate crisis and work towards a sustainable future for our city by taking the following actions. Join ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, a global network of local governments dedicated to sustainability, resilience, and climate action to share resources and cutting-edge tools to help local governments reach their goals. Power 10% of the city buildings with solar by 2024, working towards an eventual goal of 100%. Commit to purchasing electric vehicles from today on, or electric city vehicles from today on, with an eventual goal of a fully electric fleet, and coordinate a curbside composting system, reducing Newberg's carbon emissions from food waste. Our current leadership's role is to make sure we have a future to look forward to despite the climate crisis. These items are demands, not suggestions, and we expect the city council and the city manager to take action on them over the next few months. We expect to see these priorities reflected in next year's budget and significant steps taken towards our goals by April 1st, 2020. The problem with climate change can be overwhelming when we try to figure out how to fix it all. Focusing on our city helps us take practical steps that can make a huge difference right where we live here. So Meryl is going to talk about the more the ICLEI part of the petition.
Hello, my name is Meryl Kunkel, and so we are right now in an unprecedented time in history. Last month, over 4 million people took part in the climate strikes worldwide, demanding that direct action be taken in order to slow the devastating effects of climate change. While climate change is global in nature, what our cities do individually and in unison to address climate change can set the agenda for communities and governments everywhere. I invite you all to be part of the solution. I am part of a local group here in Newberg called the Newberg Sustainable Solutions Group. We're a broad coalition of community members whose mission is to provide leadership, collaboration, and guidance on actions that will reduce our community's greenhouse gas emissions and increase our resiliency to the impacts of climate change. One of the goals of our group is to facilitate a community-wide greenhouse gas emissions inventory. Developing an inventory can help our city understand ongoing activities, major sources of emission, identifying areas to focus activities, establishing and tracking programs and progress towards goals, refining or improving existing projects, on and on. As such, we would like to ask you to consider the City of Newberg becoming a member of ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. ICLEI is an international organization that provides resources, programs, and toolkits to thousands of cities and institutions who are pursuing deep reductions in carbon pollution and taking tangible improvements in sustainability. Ashland, Beaverton, Bend, Eugene, Lake Oswego, Milwaukee, and Portland are all members. And our plan is, once the city becomes a member, we would gain access to their resources and toolkits. One program that they provide is called ClearPath. They provide step-by-step technical and resource support for facilitating greenhouse gas inventories. One of our members, who's part of the Sustainable Solutions Group, Pete Sirius, Mr. Sid, he wants to allow his high school students to actually do the work of the inventory. So they would do all the research involved in the project, and they would get the hands-on learning experiences of, doing that kind of research, seeing what kind of emissions our city is like, and then being able to set goals and actually see what comes from those goals, and also have a voice in the kind of solutions that our city decides to take. So becoming a member of ICLEI and facilitating a greenhouse gas inventory would be taking a first step in understanding the carbon footprint of our community and ways we can develop and grow to be more sustainable. Greenhouse gas inventories are quite costly. But this organization provides the support necessary for a modest annual fee that's based on population. So this is the fine print, right? It's based on population. Populations of 50,000 or less, it's an annual fee of $600. Which I think is pretty modest, but, based on what, I know, right? I know, right? Yeah.
Waiting for thousands.
No, but it's only $600, which is
Okay.
why I think it's a really useful tool for us and for our high school students in our community for a pretty modest amount of money. They do ask that one person, either city council or staff, act as point of contact, but you could give us permission to our group and the high school students permission to do all of the work necessary. So I would ask you all if you would be willing to pass the resolution to participate in ICLEI, or for Newberg to become a member, and for Newberg to become a leader in addressing the pressing issue of climate change.
All right, thank you. Thank you. And you guys, do you want to introduce others in your group that are here, or you all can stand up if you are here in support of this? We'd love to see you. Come on, I see signs and everything. Come on, man. There you go. You can face the camera, which is right behind you. There it is.
We do have some other rebels, they weren't able to come.
But thank you. Thank you for planting trees the other day too, as well. You, both of you. So thank you very much. That's a great thing. Do we have questions for these folks? Anybody? Yeah, have a seat. Any questions? Anybody? All right. And I'll just, normally what we'll do now, if, and you weren't here earlier, but we have a tracker where we'll say, okay, now we've been brought essentially public comment. There it is, right there. Sue? Perfect. So now what we'll do is we'll go to staff and say, okay, we've got the recommendation from, or the demands actually, so we'll start with that. And then again, as you said, with the ICLEI, and we'll look at that and then come back to, so we can't make a decision at this point, but we can ask staff to now do some research and work towards that, so.
Can I just say,
Please.
congratulations. I mean, I think your generation is going to help us change the world, because you're not gonna put up with our crap like we put up with the ones before, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really, I hate to tell you this, but we fouled it up so far that it's on you to clean it up. And I know that's terrible to say, but in many ways, but we'll try to do what we can before,
We'll listen to you.
Before we pass everything on to you. So there we go. All right, anybody, anything else? All right, thank you.
Can we get a picture of you standing with your sign?
Yes, pictures. All right.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Please come. All of you come.
Yes, there we go.
So I will just say that last Friday when we knew that we were going to get a petition, but didn't know exactly how many people were going to be there, and it was pretty powerful. It was over 60.
Nice.
I know that because I counted in my panorama photo that I took, and I definitely didn't get everybody, but it was very powerful, especially because the majority of it were new.
Good.
And it
Great.
was awesome.
Thank you, guys. That's awesome. All right. Let's see. So Sue, we are on to public comments. Have you received?
I have not received any
No?
public comments.
Okay, no public comments this evening. So given that, and I haven't received any, we didn't receive any in the mail. Let's move on then to,
No,
No.
we did receive for urban renewal.
for urban renewal,
Mr.
which is in the packet.
Which is in the
Yeah,
packet.
okay, and that we've got under the item, the appropriate item. Okay, the consent calendar. And now I can say, once we get a motion, anybody?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Second. Patrick with a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing that, the consent calendar passes. All right, so with that, welcome now, I'll say this again, to Lacey Digraph as our new community engagement specialist, and promotions to Travis Hyder and Jonathan Hodgkins, and Brittany to a full-time, Brittany Jeffries, full-time in the IT department. So thank you all. All right, next on the agenda. All right, so this is a public hearing regarding Resolution 2019-3603, a resolution adopting procedures, standards, criteria, and policy directives to be used in the hiring of the city manager. The hearing is now called to order. Declarations of conflicts of interest or abstentions, folks. Okay, and I hear we have no public testimony for this. Public testimony is closed. All right, and now presentation. Good evening.
Good evening, how are you today?
Doing well, how are you?
It's good to see everybody. I wanted to walk through the position profile for the city manager position. This was created through input from all of you in my individual conversations, of course the staff within City Hall, as well as the community events. I know David spoke to you about that earlier in terms of attendance and who we heard from through those conversations. Had some great interactions with the community and brought you the profile today. What I'd like to do is just go section by section. And then if there's any changes, updates, modifications, I'll take notes and hopefully we can come to a consensus to approve it tonight with any changes that are recommended. Questions on the document? Okay. The Newberg community, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, exhibit B is all in there.
Okay.
I was just finding my way.
Did you get there? Okay. So the Newberg community is the first section. This really articulates population, what the community has to offer, the region, schools, etc. Anything in particular in this section that needs updating and or changing based on your review? Great. I thought it was important to highlight that 2040 community vision that you all just completed. So this next section is taken from that document. Hopefully there's no changes here in that section. And the next section is inside City Hall. Talks a little bit more about the departments, the budget, number of employees, the fact that fire services are provided by TDLR, and then of course Parks and Recreation through the Park District. Any changes or modifications to this section? The next section is the job description, kind of the nuts and bolts of the position. The majority of this was taken from the job description that the city has on file. Navigated a little bit, but that's where this information was lifted from. Questions, modifications, changes to this section? Great. Now into a little bit more juicier information. This next section is really about priorities, both short and long term. We know that some of these definitely are not short-term priorities. Separated them between some internal priorities and external priorities. So we'll start with the internal ones on top first. Any questions, concerns, changes, anything missing from this section in your opinion? The external priorities?
Well, you've done this a few times. Yeah, you've done this a few times.
I was looking too.
I appreciate that. The next section is the successful candidate section. Traits, qualities, characteristics, and background we're looking for in this position. Same question, any changes, modifications, dates? Nope. Qualifications section. Again, the majority of this was lifted from the job description plus some additional information. There was a question around the city manager residing within. and Truman could speak to this if necessary from the charter. The charter technically does not require the city manager to live within the city.
Correct,
I
so
don't
the charter says city manager does not need to reside in the city at the time of appointment. The legislative history that I looked at from the last charter revision committee, when it was being presented to the voters, indicated that it was left to the council to determine whether that would be a requirement of the job or not. And so it's really a decision for the council to decide if that would be an actual requirement of the job. Clearly understanding that someone who doesn't live here now could apply for the job, and if you decided that, you would have some reasonable time to relocate to town. Or you could, as the current resolution was written, I believe, if my memory serves, it's stated as a desirable characteristic that they reside within town and not absolutely.
And our practice has been, at least in recent years, is to require the city manager, at least the last city manager.
There has been, that has been a requirement on prior job previously.
Okay. David?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more of an frequent requirements in city government. It's, as we go through generational changes in leadership, I think it will serve to reduce your pool of applicants, should you choose to impose that requirement on applicants. Again, it's becoming more and more unexpected as a requirement. I think Heather can.
And I can speak to when we are recruiting and engaging in those conversations, I can absolutely speak to the importance of living in the community and embracing the community as their own. And without, I think David is correct, it will limit the pool if we already require it in there. And if we have some flexibility, if we have some flexibility within the language as Truman had indicated.
So, David, when you were hired in Independence, did they require you to live there, or you just?
So the way it was probably put to me is there's a couple of zip codes over there, 97351 and 97361. 361 covers Monmouth. That was the zip code I was asked not to live in.
Okay. Okay, yeah, makes sense, makes sense. Okay, but I think, can you do the job by not living in the town?
Am I doing the job for you now?
Oh, good point. Okay.
There's one of the few positions that actually gets emergency call-outs is the city manager. Because there's really not much we can actually do in a true emergency, other than maybe, if it's big quake or something like that, obviously we have to be here, to do our job. But even there, your emergency management, operations chief is going to be somebody in public safety. The city manager is going to be your PIO for all intents and purposes, most EOC plans. So, by and large, yes, the job can absolutely be done. And you'll find probably that many of the applicants will want to live here ultimately, and you do have certainly good, it certainly is a nice, great place to live, but making that a requirement at the outset is, do nothing but hurt your pool.
But this is your profile, so I wanted to call attention to that specific aspect as you think through this section.
Anyone? Thoughts?
Yeah, just two more things there. There's an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage of being a resident, I am a resident of Independence. The advantage is that when we do go through the process, say with rate setting or whatnot, it's pretty easy to say, well, I'm going to feel this rate bump as well. So that's the plus side of being I'm incurring pain as well as when I'm making these recommendations. Downside is, and I think you've seen this in the past as well, is there is an inclination to get involved, overly involved perhaps, in issues that are before the public that have one side or another a dynamic that way. And you may, as a manager, your heart may get drawn to one side or the other, and become advocates, unnecessary advocates for a position, just because of how it affects you.
The only other part about that, I guess, is that you know, well, anyway, I mean, Newberg, we've never, in all the studies that have been done for years and years, we don't want to become more of a bedroom community, right? We want people to live and work here. So, you know, honestly, I mean, I would say, you know, most any leadership position, we would love to have people work here generally, and that's school district, Parks and Rec, whoever it is. But, you know, I can understand that, and we hear, of course, police officers don't always like to live where they work, and I get that. But anyway, for myself, I would want it to be strongly encouraged. Yeah, but I understand the idea of reducing the pool. Anybody?
I was just gonna make the comment too, just with our current situation and how many city managers have been in place, I just feel like requiring that is going to limit the applicant pool as to who could do that at the capacity of their life. Uproot their family, change school districts, advance kids, and I just feel like
Chances are,
It's a
if somebody's
conversation.
coming from outside of the area, out of state, outside of the area, they will move into the community because they're moving around. Exactly. Where you would run into a little bit more of a conversation is something that's more local to the metropolitan area and has children in a school district, in schools already. Maybe they're at a certain stage in their schools where it would be harder to transition them to a new school. Those are things that are in play that would be much more of a conversation with more localized candidates, less so with candidates completely out of the area. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So in the resolution 3603 that's before you, as written, on page 3, under these standards and criteria, subsection 5C says residents, ideally the city manager will reside within the city. And so that's as the resolution reads. If the council wants to change that requirement, then it would require a motion to amend the resolution.
Anyone else?
The last section is just logistical pieces with all of my contact information. The other thing that I wanted to ensure was kind of a look and feel with the images, the photos, are you comfortable with that layout from a graphic and aspect with pictures, and it's hard to see it on the phone, but.
Yeah, I think it looks great.
Okay.
It represents us well.
Okay.
I have one little thing, and that's under, like, the very first page, Newberg Community, the very first picture is the Allison,
Yeah.
which is a great asset to our community, but I don't see it as representing our community. And so that's a great picture, I'm fine with the picture being there, but I wonder about like the first picture being something, is that, I don't.
I would agree with
Yeah.
Sure.
And the Allison's already has a picture of
Yeah, yeah, that would be great, just first
Yeah.
picture. It could be something I'll look
Okay.
at. Sorry, I had to give you something.
No, that's, I appreciate that. There were originally 4 pictures on this page, and I added a paragraph, so it took out some images, but I can easily move some pictures around. Anything else?
Well, I don't know if this runs afoul of church and state, but we have 30-odd churches in this community. And people should know that it is a very churched community. And that's not saying anything except that that's very much in the fiber of our being, I think, back to the days of our founding. So, I don't know, I mean, because it's unique, and we don't see that certainly in the Pacific Northwest. So, anyway, that would be just a comment. But I think what that leads to too, hopefully, is that we have a fairly robust nonprofit sector in this community. And so I think a lot of people that do care. And so I think if that can come through, that would be great.
There is a sentence around residents of Newberg believe strongly in volunteering and provide countless hours of support to the community's many churches and social
There you go,
service
okay, thank you,
organizations.
there it is, okay, perfect.
So, does that Are you comfortable with that?
Works for me,
Okay,
yep.
great.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Chairman.
as a point of order, on our administrative hearing format, I understand you said no one was signed up for public comment, but the public comment testimony is supposed to come after the staff report, so, and because the statute is, so clear on the requirement to take public input on the selection process for hiring a city manager, I would suggest you might want to ask
Open it
again
again?
if there's anybody that wants to
Okay.
testify.
I will do so. All right, with that, would anyone in the audience like to make comment on this recruitment of the city manager? Feel free, we got time. Seeing none. Okay, I will again close public testimony. All right, and the recommendation, Heather, please.
I recommend that the council approve this resolution and that we can begin recruiting.
Yes? Okay, all right. Deliberation, folks. Do that.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt resolution 2019-3603 with the amendments that were suggestions by council.
Second.
And Patrick with a second. Further discussion?
What was the amendment?
Changing the picture.
We're changing
Oh,
that.
changing the picture,
Yep,
okay.
the Allison picture
Because the
on the front
ideally,
page.
ideally means in the best case scenario.
Yeah.
So it doesn't say
It's
mandatory, yeah, it doesn't say it's mandatory, so I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. Anything else? Sue?
So some of you have already let me know your schedule. Please keep in mind December will be a busy month for you.
Yes.
So if you haven't made arrangements to be available December 16th and 15th, please do. The timeline is in here, Heather put in the timeline. She will be continuing to update it, but I know that's the holiday season and people like to know far enough in advance that they get it in there. And a reminder too, we'll be having a special meeting on the 9th. Okay, and I heard from a quorum of you, but just making sure you get that down for your calendars. I'll keep reminding you, I'm sure as well, Heather.
And the timeline for the recruitment will not change at this point.
Right, okay.
Just Mayor,
We're locked in.
Yes,
just along the same lines, I think Sue has it down for noon to question mark.
Right.
So you're gonna have at least, I imagine, Heather and I haven't consulted on this, but I imagine you're gonna have two different things going on. You're gonna have a series of interviews with candidates, but then you're gonna convene separately, probably in the evening, both in the executive session and public session, perhaps, if you have a preferred candidate, with directions to us to do something after that. So, you know, noon to whatever really means dark.
Okay.
Yep.
Noon to dark. Okay. Got it. Okay,
So, I have a question.
fire away.
So I was just planning on taking the 16th off, is that?
Good plan.
Okay.
Good plan. Great plan.
Hey, good.
The 15th, I think, as well, if they wanna go out and join them or not.
The 15th is a Sunday, and so the candidates, as we're discussing now, would be doing a wonderful tour of the community in the afternoon hours, and then we would do the community meet and greet in the evening hours, early evening hours.
So they're welcome to meet and greet as well.
Absolutely.
And if they're not doing any work, you're just welcome to
Yep.
be there.
But
And
on
the
the
community.
16th, noon on.
Noon on, right. And the community is invited to that, please. We'd like
Yes.
your input on the candidates.
And we will do, as it gets closer, we will do some incredible communication.
Then we now have
Sue
the
is
engagement
back.
specialist that can help with.
Yep.
Yeah, that, right. And just, this is for the audience, this, I think you can safely say this is the most important thing that the city council probably does, is to hire the city manager. The city manager is the person that we entrust all of this. And I've used this example before, but we're in many ways the board of directors, and they are the CEO. And so it's vitally important that we get a good candidate. So if you know of anybody, it'll be open soon, so there you go. Get them in touch with Heather. All right, anything else? We've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, resolution 2019-3603 passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, moving on in your program to item 9A, tax increment financing. And I believe this is Mr. Doug Russ. Oh, while you're getting ready, can I just, one other thing?
I'm short and I cannot see.
Yeah.
I was gonna do that before, because I couldn't see.
Yeah.
Just one other thing, since our esteemed colleague, Mike, this is his last meeting, but for the audience, and I think we'll put this out there, we will accept applications to fill Mike's spot until October 24th at 5 o'clock. And then we will deliberate and make a decision on November 4th is the plan. So there you go. All right. All right, Mr. Rux.
Thank you, Mayor. Doug Rux, Community Development Director. So here tonight to kind of give you an Urban Renewal 101 session. The last time we provided one of these to council was back in January of 2017. So there are new faces who have not seen or heard this particular presentation. So what I'm going to go over tonight is what is tax increment financing, also known as urban renewal. I'm going to get a little bit of history about urban renewal, not in detail. There's a lot of detail. We're going to keep it high level. Some history of what's been going on in Newberg. This goes back into the 80s. We're going to talk about why consider a tax increment program now, and a bunch of slides to show you some things that we've been working on the last 4.5 years. And then I'm going to walk through some kind of the steps in the process that you have to go through to comply with ORS 457. So, tax increment financing, it's all about addressing the issues of blight. So, in the statute, there is a definition of blight, and there's a long list of things that are underneath that, which can identify blight situations. And so I tried to list those up, and I am not going to read them to you. But, in summary, this is economically disadvantaged areas. We're talking about rehabilitation. We can acquire property. We can do improvements. Infrastructure improvements. So earlier we were talking about SDCs, and so this kind of all plays into that. I'll respond to the mayor's comment earlier. Some communities do facade improvement programs to help address and attract businesses into downtown and customers as well. So it's in the world of economic development, it is a tool to help finance improvements, and that's really big. And so when we look at our infrastructure plans, sewer, water, storm, transportation, and so forth, you'll see millions of dollars worth of improvements that are identified. It could be areas that are greenfield in nature. It could be areas that has some development, but some buildings are in deteriorating state. We've got a lot of vacant lots. It's always important to state right up front when you talk about urban renewal, because there's a misnomer, it does not increase your property taxes. It is a redistribution of the property taxes that are already being paid. And so there's a process to go through with what we call the overlapping tax adjustments, and have a conversation with them about what that impact is, and I'll get to a little more detail about what we have to do for reports and so forth. So what happens is that a city council creates the urban renewal agency. City council is the one who actually approves an urban renewal report and plan. But the urban renewal agency is called a separate body and politic, and it gives you powers that are separate from the city council. But they're the powers to address the issue of blights and the programs, and so things are identified in that plan and that report that you have or would have the purview of. But also allows what we call special flexibility. So if you were in a situation of working with a developer and you had an urban renewal program and you had funds available to do some infrastructure projects, you can negotiate the quality of the development or things the community is looking for this financial contribution to address infrastructure issues. I'm going to use infrastructure, but there's other things that are there. So we have some additional flexibility. We also, in urban renewal, have flexibility on the sale of property. So if we were to acquire a piece of property, by statute we can sell it for fair reuse value. In the city, you have to sell it for fair market value. So there's some distinctions that come with A little bit of the history, so 1949, that's when urban renewal, we call the modern urban renewal, started in the US. There's a lot of stuff that's related to California. They were kind of the leaders of all this. And in 1950, they did a constitutional amendment. 51, they implemented some enacting legislation. Really, it was 1951 when it started in Oregon. So there was some enabling legislation that was proposed, and that was expanded in 1957. I was not born yet when this all happened. But what it said on that slide, the purpose was to access federal funds. So this is back when there were a lot of funds that were coming from the federal government, entitlement funds that were coming to communities, and some communities created urban renewal district as a way to access those federal funds. So by the time we got to 1960s, Oregon voters approved the constitutional amendment on tax increment financing in the state. In 61, the legislature implemented legislation. And so what's key here was modeled off of California. So Oregon and California systems are very, very similar. Other systems across the U.S. and other states, and there are states that do not have urban renewal, but ours is kind of modeled after California. 79, based upon what was enacted, there was kind of the first of a major rewrite of the legislation on tax increment financing. By the time we got to 1990, many of you remember Measure 5, tax limitations came into place. In 97, Measure 47 came into place, and that impacted urban renewal. There was a point in time in history after Measure 5 and 47, there was a question of urban renewal program continued to exist within the state. It did. By 2001, there was a court case, the Shiloh case, and that changed how you categorize taxes that are being paid. And then 2003, the Department of Revenue did some statutory changes based on that Oregon Supreme Court decision. By the time we got to 2003, it kind of clarified that urban renewal agencies, or adding urban renewal agencies to housing authorities, and it was really dealing with public records. And so often you're dealing with, highly sensitive information and projects that are coming in, so there's a little bit of different coverage under the urban renewal program. 2006, Measure 39 came into play, and this was really it was the Kelo case. And so now, if you condemn property, so a city or an urban renewal agency, the urban renewal agency would not be able to sell that to a private development. Basically, you're holding it as a public asset in perpetuity. So it's always better to negotiate some kind of land transactions for some additional right-of-way, some piece of property that was identified as a plan. The 2007 prevailing wage jobs came. This actually came out of the City of Salem case. This dealt with the hotel and the convention center, and the project was built together, prevailing wage. And so out of all this, it came that if an urban renewal agency is investing $750,000, this also applies to the city, or more, then the development has to pay prevailing wage. If you're underneath that, it's always prudent to go to the BOLI commissioner and get a written interpretation to see that we're complying. The second big change happened in urban renewal in 2009. We did a big rewrite. And that was based upon a lot of conversations with the overlapping taxing districts and the length of time in plans. What was one of the really key pieces of that legislation was revenue sharing. And so we set maximum indebtedness amounts for urban renewal plans. We had different triggers for revenue sharing because that was an issue for the overlapping districts. So remember to keep in mind that the city is considered an overlapping taxing district. So much more flexibility now in plans that are being created. The 2009, we also did a thing that had not happened before. It was called a cooperation agreement with all of the parties who were negotiating. HB 3056, and basically it gave a reprieve for all of those changes to go into effect to monitor and see how they're working, rather than having the parties come each legislative session, which was every 2 years at that point in time, and trying to change it. So it kind of gave everybody a break. It was the 2019 session when that stopped, the agreement terminated, and so it came back, and there were new modifications in HB 2175. And kind of the big ones, it redefined what's a public building. And so if I was to say, Here's ORS 457, here's the new legislation that changes a portion of it. Clarified on how much land you can add to an urban renewal district. There was some language before, but it was not necessarily clear. Made some changes on what you have to put in a report to create an urban renewal plan, and then clarified some issues on standard and renewal plan. And I don't want to get into the details of that for hours and hours. There are about 175 urban renewal districts statewide. There are 3 in Yamhill County now. So Dundee, Carlton, and Wendell are 3 within the county. But you can see they're scattered across the state. Some jurisdictions have several. Some only have 1. It depends upon the local community and their issues of blight and what needs to be addressed. So a little bit in regards to kind of what's happened in the past in Newberg. And so in 1982, there was the Centennial Redevelopment Plan. It was really focusing on the downtown. You'll see a theme here, focusing on the downtown revitalization. It went through the process based upon the statute at the time and was approved by the city council. There was a process to go out for referral once the plan is adopted. Signatures were gathered and ended up going to a vote. And you see in the red is that by that petition in ordinance 1983, that urban renewal plan was terminated, and the urban renewal agency was then subsequently dissolved as well. Then we jumped to 2001. City council evaluated again, looking at an urban renewal plan, and it included land in the downtown again, but it also had land out along Portland Road and out toward Fred Meyer. At that time, some greenfield land, wasn't as it is today. It went through a similar process. So a report was put together, a plan was put together, an agency was created, the council and planning commission did their processes with it, the council adopted it, got approved. Again, it went out for a referendum, which is allowed by statute, and signatures were gathered enough to put it on the ballot, and that one was voted down by 57 to 43. So there was a little over 7,000 people who voted in that particular election. So why do this now? Well, we've done a number of things in the last 4.5, going on 5 years. And so 2016, created an economic development strategy. And in that strategy, it talks about evaluating creating an urban renewal district in our commercial and industrial sectors. We did the Newberg Strategic Tourism Plan in 2016. And in there, one of the things, well, several things are identified, but one is the rail line that goes down Plain Street and the idea of a trolley. And could you run a trolley from the river into downtown, and eventually could that trolley run out to the Allison? But there was also some things in that plan that were called moonshots, and kind of some big ideas. Some of the big ideas we're looking at, what about the riverfront? So this is pre-our riverfront plan. So there was already some discussion about, the uniqueness of the riverfront, the fact that, it's been closed and so forth, what are the opportunities? Then we got to doing the downtown improvement plan. So there was a plan that was done in the 80s, about 86. It basically sat on a shelf, never went much of any place. We got the grant, we went through the process, spent 18 months, 19 months, came up with a new downtown plan, has the 10 big ideas that are in it. And one of the funding mechanisms for that was identified is to evaluate the feasibility of the urban renewal program for the downtown. We updated the transportation system plan. So Carm was referring to that in our SDC presentation. And so that identifies transportation improvements, and some of these improvements could be within an urban renewal district. Then we updated the water master plan, the wastewater master plan. We've been working on what was called the Newberg 2030 program. That was, I think, with Division 38 under a 14-year horizon. Council, we terminated that process. We're looking at the Division 24 process for additional lands for our future. Then we had the Riverfront Master Plan last month. We accepted that plan. In that plan, it was identified to evaluate the feasibility of an urban renewal program. And then last but not least, we just did the community vision program. And if you look at livability and development, if you look at economic development, again, it looks at what are the different tools that are available to help advance the community's economic perspectives and desires. So those are all the things that are kind of leading up to why is this coming back in front of you. So what does it take to put together a plan? A lot of work. And it requires a consultant. There are specialists that are out there. But the first thing is this feasibility study or report that needs to be done. And it's listed out in statute specifically. If you look at socioeconomic, we have to do a lot of financial modeling. So we have to look at the impacts on the overlapping taxing districts. And so typically what you do is you look at a low and a medium and high development scenario. And now, if you look at the 2009 changes, we got to look at, well, revenue sharing and what happens. Because when the law changed, it used to be urban renewal captured all of the tax increment basically out until you met your maximum indebtedness amount and you determined with your plan. And when we changed the law in 2009, it basically allows that you get to 10% of your maximum indebtedness amount, and then you get another percentage above that until you get to 12.5%, and then there's all this revenue sharing that occurs. So that means that the urban renewal agency doesn't collect all of the tax increment. He gives some of that back to the overlapping districts so that they can help do their business operations, be it school district, park district, soil conservation, county, ESD, so forth and so on. But there's also another provision. You can actually start a plan off, and something we have to evaluate. Do you do more revenue sharing up front? Or do you follow the statutory provisions? So there's different ways to look at it. So there are consultants out there that have complex models to put all this stuff together. You have to create an urban renewal agency. So creation of the urban renewal agency happens after you do this feasibility report. You determine if you have blight. If you have blight conditions, then in the statute you can activate an urban renewal agency. And there's some, you have to really pay attention to the language in the statute because it says when you create a plan, it has to go back to the agency. So you have to create an agency before you can have a plan. But at least you've got the feasibility and you determine if there's blight. Then you take that report and then there's a plan that's put together. And that then goes back through the community process, and it ends up in front of the planning commission for a recommendation, and then goes to the city council. And those are in hearings, and ultimately the council has to adopt an ordinance. The ordinance has to be by non-emergency, and that's in statute that we have to do if an ordinance is adopted. So, how long does it take to do one of these? Probably somewhere between 9 and 15 months. The cost is roughly $100,000 to do this because you've got the feasibility report, you've got the plan, you have to create legal descriptions, you've got a thing called super notice where you have to notify, and there's different categories within that you have to notify, so there's an expense associated with that as well. The feasibility study, public involvement. And that's to get the community, for the citizens and the businesses to understand what tax increment financing is, and what it means, and what opportunities may be there. And that's why all this modeling is looking at what those impacts may be. We have to establish a boundary, and it has a maximum of 25% of the land area within the city limits, not the UGB, within the city limits. We've got to define blight, and so that comes out of that feasibility report. Then we have to identify projects, and so one of the things between the downtown plan and the riverfront plan, we've already identified a long list of projects. So that's a good starting point. We have to go back and look at our comprehensive plan and make sure that the urban renewal plan would be in alignment with the comprehensive plan. If it's not, then potentially there's a process to make amendments to the comprehensive plan so the urban renewal plan would align with one another. This whole financial analysis is we're limited to 25% of the assessed value in the city. Again, that's within the city limit. And then we have to establish a maximum indebtedness amount, and there are now triggers based on the 2009 legislation that are in place. So we have to look at all of that. And then we have to do this bottom bullet is the impact on the taxes on the taxing districts. And so there's a lot of conversations that need to be had so that we can share the financial models with them so that they can understand what that all means. I mentioned earlier, the city council is the one that activates the agency, and it has to be done by ordinance, and again, it's a non-emergency ordinance. We have to establish a board, and there are different triggers depending. Typically what you see is that the city council, you take your baseball cap and you turn it around, and you function as the urban renewal agency. There are some other models where you may have a joint where it's a city and county. And then there's some provisions about how many members you have to have on one. Then an advisory committee. It's not required that you have an urban renewal advisory committee, but many cities do, so they're advisory to the urban renewal agency board about any potential modifications to a plan, projects, timing, things of that nature. So again, this whole thing in the urban renewal plan, public involvement, area boundary blight, goals and objectives have to be established, and all of the projects to be funded, and then you have to identify the funding of those, estimated timing of those projects and the funding for those projects. So you might have a project today that says it costs $1 million, but that project might not happen for 12 years, so you have to factor in the inflationary factor to get to the year 12, and that's your estimated project cost. That's what we have consultants for. Comprehensive plan, economic development review, procedural requirements, the plan, urban renewal report, and the finance. So part of the issue is people say, well, what does urban renewal mean? So let's say you started an area and it had an assessed value of $25 million, just a hypothetical number. There's your assessed value, that becomes your frozen base. The tax increment is the value of new development that happens within the boundary of that district, and the 3% increase that occurs every year in the assessed value. But again, if you go back and when we do modeling in this, you may choose to do some revenue sharing early, you could do it for the statute, so there's some things, there's some choices to be made through this process. Maximum indebtedness, we talked about that. Revenue sharing with overlapping taxing districts, I've mentioned that, part of the financing components of it. Again, I have to say, it's not increasing property taxes, redistribution of property taxes that are already being paid. So I know even part of the comment we got was, you've all read it, it's like urban renewal on its face does not increase property taxes. Other choices could lead to different conclusions. So it's always caution people, start with the base, look at what the statute says, and do your evaluation accordingly. Council has already approved the funding, so I mentioned earlier the $100,000, and so that is coming out of the economic development revolving loan fund. So it's not out of the general fund, it's a separate fund. And so these are a couple of graphs that are trying to depict kind of how this revenue sharing takes place. So you can see the bottom is the frozen base, so that was that number I gave you, 25 million, and off of that assessed value, there's the taxes. And everybody gets their base amount. But as the taxes grow, urban renewal captures it, and then you finally get to a point that urban renewal, you're releasing it, and all the money goes back. The graph on the right is trying to show a representation of this revenue sharing model and how it can occur. And again, the timing can occur towards the beginning, or it can follow when you get to 10% or the 12.5%. So yes, I agree, there's not text that explains it all, but there is a whole urban renewal manual that we've put together in the past, it's being updated now, that does get into the details. I mentioned the referendum process. Referendums are subject to RS 250. One of the things that's in the statute that if no referendum, no petition is filed, no referendum occurs, no vote, then for all purposes, 90 days after the adoption of the plan, it cannot be challenged. Now, urban renewal, so I've talked about maximum indebtedness. In the earlier versions of plans that were done in the early 80s and in 2001, were often based on time. Now it's based on maximum indebtedness. And so time can fluctuate, depends upon the economic activity we have for new development and growth occurring. So you do projections, but it could be a little shorter or it could be a little longer. So it's not necessarily fixed. There are some jurisdictions who have chosen to say, doesn't matter, we've looked at all the modeling and so forth, we're gonna fix a date, we're gonna put it into the plan. We have that ability to do as well. But again, there will be choices, or there is choices and options. So I mentioned where the funding's coming from to do this. Request for a proposal, my best goal is to get it out by the end of the week. If not, I'll need one more weekend. Then there's another thing, so that money that's being used from Fund 14, Economic Development Revolving Loan Fund, there is a process for that fund to get repaid by the renewable agency. So actually, you're going to get a resolution that states the city's intent, if an agency is created and the plan adopted and it's valid, is that the renewal agency would pay that $100,000 back to Fund 14. So it's a two-step process. One is a resolution of City Council's intent. The second one is after the plan is adopted, and if it doesn't go through the referendum process, there will be an intergovernmental agreement that's entered into between the city and the agency to repay those funds. Plus, there would also be elements about paying for financial services, because there's some services the agency would contract back to the city. So I'm anticipating proposals are going to be due the week of the 4th. If not, they'll be due the week of the 11th. Didn't get as far this weekend with it as I hoped. There will be a review of the proposals. My suggestion would be that we have a citizens advisory committee that dovetails as we go through creating a feasibility report, and if it's feasible and there is blight, and through creation of the plan itself. That's part of that public involvement engagement process.
Okay. All right, number one, stop working on the weekends. I'm hearing that, I heard that a couple of times, so. But anyway.
We'll never get our work done.
I know, right? All right, okay, so can we go back to this $25 million frozen base, okay? So a couple assumptions. So we've got a frozen base of 25 million, and we're looking at the riverfront and to down.
It's stated a little bit different.
Okay,
In the statute, it says that the area of your boundary, if it has an assessed value of $50 million or less, you can establish a maximum indebtedness amount of $50 million.
okay,
If your maximum indebtedness, I can remember the next one, is 50 to 100 million, I think it is that you get the 50 million plus then there's a percentage. So until we establish a boundary and then look at the county assessment data to see what the assessed value is, I can't give you a number. But I can kind of invert that, is that in 2016, the downtown plan identified $25 million worth of improvements.
okay.
The riverfront plan that was just accepted had roughly $44 million. You add those two numbers together, it may be larger than the assessed value, so that's where there's choices then about projects. So the riverfront plan listed out all these projects, doesn't mean that you can fund all of them. You may pick certain ones that give you the best value to leverage to attract development to occur. Similar issue in the downtown. So again, until we get in and start really looking at the numbers and start modeling it, I can't give you an absolute.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to get the more the concept. So, you know, if, okay, so say it's a $25 million frozen base and we can borrow then another 25 million. Is that it?
No, so I'm gonna use a different number.
Okay,
Let's use 50 million.
50, sounds good.
So let's say you have maximum indebtedness of 50 million.
Okay.
That means that you could go into debt, simplest terms, you can go into debt for $50 million.
Okay,
And how you pay that back. So going through that debt, it can be the tax increment that comes in and you directly spend on the project. Or it could be you go out and issue a bond. And you're leveraging future growth within the district. So let's say you went out for a $5 million bond for maybe a 7 to 9 year period.
okay,
And then you would pay that back. So one of the principles of urban renewal is you always work in debt.
right, right.
You're always in the red until the end when you're in the black. And then at the end, you release all of this assessed value, then goes back to all of the overlapping taxing districts.
And the city.
And the city has one of those overlapping districts.
So, Doug, you could.
With a much.
With a higher value.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's basically investing that increment back into the community and use it as an economic development tool to attract businesses to come to Newberg, correct? So,
Yes.
for example, we have that downtown master plan where we have a lot of bump outs and sidewalks and different, brick and mortar type projects. With an urban renewal district, we could do those projects and use that as a carrot to attract new businesses downtown, or have as an incentive to have people make improvements to their businesses.
Correct. So we've identified, we inventoried all of the vacant parcels within the 100-acre downtown area. And we know that there are infrastructure deficiencies, so it's not just the road diet concept. We've got undersized water lines, sewer lines, storm lines. Parking's gonna be an issue down the road. How do we address that? I talked about facade improvements, and so, some businesses have talked to me and said, well, I'd like to do something with my facade. Well, right now, we gotta send you to someplace else to go get a grant, which is typically through a state agency. Could there be some local funds? And so there's a way to invest in the structure at the local level.
So if I'm, as an example, wanting to build some sort of plant that needs reclaimed water, and I'm down by the riverfront, but I don't want to pay for the pipe to go to the wastewater treatment plant, an urban renewal district, if the plant is in the district, could assist with the cost of that pipe, correct?
For that, it's within the urban renewal district,
Exactly.
and if it's listed in the plan.
Okay.
But it also gets to a question the mayor asked earlier in the work session about SDCs, and so we have this list of SDCs in these projects. Urban renewal could be potentially a tool to help reduce some of those master plan costs, because they're a project within an urban renewal district capital, which then, again, leads back to then adjustments and modifications to master plan.
Well, you may not know this historically, but why did these fail twice in Newberg, or why did they, I mean, it sounds like a great thing, right? I mean, we're borrowing money for future development and using future taxes to do something, right? So it sounds, why do they fail?
I do not have the answer to that. It was all way before my time. I could read a few documents, there may be others who were here at the time.
Can I give some, so I was a city councilor in Canton in the early 2000s. The entire reason I ran for city council was urban renewal. I'll be blunt. I did not like the process they used. I did not like the plan they had, and I got elected. And it was the most conflict-filled 3 years of my life being on the council with urban renewal. And I boil it down to, once I figured out what urban renewal was and how it worked and what we could do with it, go to Canby now. Their downtown is hopping, their industrial park is hopping. That's all because of urban renewal. And what the key problem was there, when they set it up, is Graymore was coming in with a Fred Meyer, and they wanted to capture the increment. So they were gonna get taxed, the money to help with the urban renewal district, and so they were on a clock. And they threw the process out, they didn't talk to the citizens, and they just slammed it through, council slammed it through, and the entire community got all worked up. If we do this, I am gonna be absolutely focused on making sure that Doug does a great job with this already, and city staff already does, but it is imperative, we're already getting comments about this presentation, to reach out to those people and talk to them about what our plans are, where we're going with this, what our intentions are, and how there are benefits to the community, as well as things that we can look out for. But as long as we all go into it open-armed, I think we can get this done. We got Tuolumne Valley Fire and Rescue in much the same way. We went out, we took the public input, some of it was great, some of it not so great, but at the end of the day, when that went up for a vote, it passed overwhelmingly. So if I was gonna caution, there's the nuts and bolts and legal stuff and the financial stuff and all that Doug has presented tonight, what I would say is that communication is gonna be the one thing, if you really wanna do this, that we have to make happen. No ifs, ands, or buts. So I've got my soapbox.
My guess is, coupled with that, because there was not an education process in Canby for the citizens, my guess is that it failed in Newberg because of the same reason. There wasn't education, and people were thinking, well, this is a tax increase and we're gonna get hit with it or something. So that, I think with the education process, I think it can be workable.
So in the RFP that's being prepared, there's three phases. Phase one is the feasibility report, which includes public engagement, open houses. We're looking for, as part of the consultant team, a firm that can help craft the message so people can understand it in layman's terms. I mean, I can get really technical and I talk over people's heads, and I know I'm gonna lose them. Then when you get to the second phase, so if there's blight that's been determined, then you come back to council with an ordinance, and they declare blight, and then they establish an urban renewal agency. There's no public involvement in that, but that comes, say, roughly kind of July time. Then you go into the plan development, and then there's another round of public engagement. And there's more open houses. There's more briefings to council, to planning commission, to urban renewal agency. And in theory, right now, I'm kind of looking at that the project would wrap up at the end of December of 2020. So that's, that's 12 to 13 months, just because we know there needs to be a lot of communication and a lot of education to understand how this works. Because Council Corey, other communities I've worked for, the first thing you hear is, you're increasing my taxes. Like, that's not what urban renewal is.
About, regarding that, we did, for the comments we're referring to were public comments submitted by Robert Suppy, for those in the audience. What about this question about the impact on the general fund? Is there an impact on the general fund?
Yes, there can be. So that 3%, so if you don't have an urban renewal district and you have development occurring within the downtown, market conditions drive it, and somebody builds a new building, right now, a portion of the property taxes come to the general fund. Right now, every year, general fund gets that 3% increase. If you had an urban renewal district, capped at the frozen base, the general fund does not get the 3% of that annual increase, and they would not collect for the new development. So, yes, and that's why we've got to model all of that to see what that implication is or impact is on the general fund. But I caution, don't run to the end and make the conclusion until we go through the analysis and be able to share it with you so that you can look at it and tell us, because by the time you get down to the end of the feasibility report, you have an option, and that will be proceed forward, because you can determine there's blight, but choose not to proceed forward in creating a plan. You could determine that there's blight, and you want to take the next step, create the agency, and create the plan. So again, part of my job will be to put together a schedule for all of this.
Let me add, it's not just expense or revenue forgone. There's also the option, there's also the possibility of capturing related expenses by the district. So some of this time will certainly be spent on urban renewal. That is a direct charge that the urban renewal reimburses. So we don't know how that balances out in the end.
Yeah, so we'll look at it because, there'll be a percentage of overhead costs for staff time. And David's correct, and so, kind of the day-to-day staff, there's a portion of that gets charged, can be charged to urban renewal. The city manager, as the administrator of an urban renewal agency, a portion of their time can be charged to urban renewal. The other portion of that is urban renewal agencies generally don't have the capacity to have a full finance department, and so they turn around and they contract back with the city to provide all their financing and go through the audit and so forth. And so that's money that would come back into the general fund.
And then some of that also, my understanding, so talking about the revenues coming from like, we might lose that revenue that normally would be going to the general fund. But hypothetically, if you don't do urban renewal, that revenue wouldn't happen anyways, hypothetically.
So that's one of the things. So, as an example, in the downtown area, we know that we have some lacking infrastructure. And that lacking infrastructure is near areas that have vacant lots. So a developer can come in and look at it and say, oh, I like that lot, but I've got these transportation improvements I've gotta deal with, and I've gotta extend these, water lines that are here, and all of a sudden their pro forma doesn't pencil out. Well, urban renewal might be a tool to come in and fill those gaps, to attract that development. So, again, I can't tell you with an absolute, it's 100%, that's what will happen, but there are market choices that are made out there. And so these programs are tools to try to help leverage that. Urban renewal can also be used, we were talking about SDCs. Urban renewal could be used to help write down SDC costs, to track development that you're looking at. So, the area that we kind of identified in the maps and so forth is downtown. It's roughly 100 acres, don't know the final yet. Some portion of the riverfront area, don't know what that is yet. But we have a plan for each already. And then it's two spines that go down, one goes down River Street. So when we talk about River Street, we're talking about the public right-of-way of River Street. One of the things we've heard in the downtown plan, the riverfront plan, is the deteriorated nature of River Street. The other is Blaine Street. So going from downtown down Blaine Street until you get to wherever the geography is established in the riverfront area. Blaine Street one is to address, again, the issues of the roadway itself, but it's also to respond to the tourism strategy of the downtown plan about this opportunity. Can we have a multimodal transportation system to take you from the river to downtown?
Patrick.
The other classic argument too is when you use an urban renewal district, you're mostly surrounding industrial properties and commercial properties, not residential. And, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, there have been studies that show that for a city, residential costs us a lot more than commercial and industrial. So while we might not be capturing the tax revenue, we also won't be spending on those properties as we usually do when it comes to residential.
Yeah, there's been studies done, we've never done one here in Newberg, but the cost of services, overall services to residential is much higher than it is to certain commercial or investment.
Well, I had a question kind of around the residential, however. So, that area, there's a lot of renters, and I'm just wondering, are there ways to avoid gentrification through this process?
It's something that we can take a look as part of the socioeconomic
Okay.
portion of the feasibility report that needs to be done. And that's where we're also gonna need to pull in and have some discussions with our Affordable Housing Commission.
Yeah.
Again, and we heard some of the issues of gentrification come up when we did the riverfront plan. And at the time, we said, we understand, we've captured it, we've acknowledged it, but we have a separate commission over here who's dealing with the housing affordability issue, and actually have a meeting with them later this month. And so I'll give them a brief recap of the riverfront plan as well.
I just want to make sure that we're working really closely with them on this.
Because, one of the big parts of the downtown improvement is to attract housing to the area.
Correct, we're looking to try to attract
Multi-family
at least
housing.
100 new residential units in the downtown area. Urban renewal could be a tool to help attract and get those residential units. So, but we're trying to look for the vertical mixed use, so we can have some ground floor retail, not every building, but some, and then have residential development.
Well, and keeping those costs low is important too, because attracting housing is one thing, and attracting affordable housing is a totally different thing.
And so also in this financial modeling, we have to pay attention to two other things that we've got going on. So in the riverfront area for industrial property, we have an enterprise zone. And the enterprise zone allows for a 3-year and up to a 5-year tax abatement. That needs to be factored into the model. We're gonna have to make some assumptions. In the downtown area, we're working on the vertical housing development zone, which is a maximum 10-year tax abatement, but it's on a graduated scale. That's has to be factored into the model as well.
David, there's the riverfront area and Independence and urban resort.
Yeah, it is totally different here in the renewal area. And I guess I was just thinking one other sort of global point about it. There's a reason there's 175 urban renewal agencies in the state. The economic development plan, economic development investments in total is a fixed amount. These agencies have a leg up on everybody else. That's why they do it.
Is there an end time? Like, when does urban rural end?
That's where there'll be some choices. So by statute is when you reach your maximum indebtedness amount that's established in your plan. There will be discussions, I'm sure, about if you look at that and we model it out, how many years that might be. Likely we'll come up with discussions like, well, maybe we don't want it that long. Maybe we want to terminate it at year 25 instead of year 30. But again, those are discussions down the road.
Okay, thanks.
What Wilson started doing, because I think they have 5 districts, is that once they got to a point in their districts where they can afford it, they would start peeling off properties and releasing properties so they can go back on the general fund and being taxing agencies. So that was pretty cool too.
Other questions, folks?
Just also remember, when Doug talks about sharing back with the overlapping districts, the city is an overlapping district, Doug mentioned that, but we will start sharing back before the district is released from its obligations.
Yeah, just one of the clear distinctions between pre-2009 and post-2000. Pre-2009, agencies kept all the tax increment up. Wilsonville was doing some release. Basically, they kept it up until they got to their maximum indemnity. We opened it up and provided much more flexibility to respond to those overlapping taxing districts by listening to their concerns about their ability to continue to provide services. Because if you get more development, they've got to provide services as well. How can we do that? So we came up with opportunities within the statute that allow that to occur. There are choices that the city council will need to make about which path we go down on the revenue share.
All right, other questions, folks? All right, cool. We'll hear more about this subject, I am sure. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda, Karen, you ready for advanced metering infrastructure?
Sure.
All right.
Don't take it personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually,
Oh, Russ hasn't been, I learned.
you know, let's, you know what, why don't we take a 5-minute break? It looks like people are doing that anyway. We'll take a 5-minute break, we'll be back. So here we go, all right. Here we go, advanced metering infrastructure, complete with props.
Love it.
Yep, here we go.
So, Mr. Mayor, Council, Mark Hoffman, City Engineer.
Russ Thomas, Superintendent of Public Works Maintenance.
And this is just an informational session to get you familiar with advanced metering infrastructure, AMI, which is actually what we have traditionally called fixed base radio read. So you've seen it before as that, but it's technically called the advanced metering infrastructure. It's an integrated system of smart meters, communication networks, and data management. So basically this really brings our meter reading into the 21st century. So, and there's a lot of good benefits, and we're going to talk about those. This project has been in the city's public improvement plan for quite a few years. So the costs are already built into all of the rate models and those types of things. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to skip the videos since those aren't working. So before 2004, it took 12 employees on foot 3 days to collect the readings. 1 day to enter the readings, then you deliver it, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a pretty people-intensive process. And obviously things would get covered up, we would lose meters, those kinds of things. So technology advances in 2004. So then it was 2 employees by bike, 3 days to collect readings, and 1 day to then import them. So those handheld devices still presented issues and delays. Some meters weren't available or very accessible, missed readings, skipped them, return trips, et cetera, et cetera. And Councilor Deborah was telling us that she did this, you know, for years.
No, I didn't have a handheld device.
Oh, okay.
And a paper.
Was this
Yeah.
Technology updates still required a meter by meter scans by employees. Still had issues with obstructions and accessibility. And then a broken meter wouldn't be noticed until the next billing cycle. So again, technology's gotten better, but it's still a process. Today, it takes 1 employee 2 days by truck to drive around the city to pick up all the meters. And then we download the data back in the office and transmit it to the utility.
one smiling employee I
They
noticed.
had one smiling
Very
employee.
happy.
I'm thinking that was, yeah. Again, some of the same issues persist today. And then we are actually gradually also replacing all of our transmitters. So the meter box itself has a meter and it also has a transmitter in it. And the transmitter is what talks to our meter reading devices. And those are called the MXUs. Sorry.
This is the
Sorry.
unit right here, and this is the housing, that you'll basically see on the top of the meter box, that's all you see. But this is actually the receiver and transmitter unit, it's encapsulated.
So we're, you have to replace them every 15 years?
15 to 20 years.
So we go through the city, gradually and replace them as we move through. So it's just something that we do on a regular basis. So advanced metering infrastructure, like I said, it's way more robust. It actually sends out we build towers and it sends out a signal to those towers and then is immediately downloaded. It doesn't require anybody to go out and drive around. Some instances, if something's not working right, we may go out, but it certainly makes it so that a person isn't driving around to pick up all of those meter readings. And it can also actually happen instantaneous whenever somebody wants to know. So this is the video I really wanted you to see, and it's giving, what it comes also with is a customer portal, and it has a dashboard and allows people to log into the system and see what their usage looks like, see when they use the most water. Can I reduce my water usage at some stage of the game? Or all of a sudden, you can also set up alerts where if you're hitting a certain number, it will alert you. You can look at it and determine, do I have a leak somewhere? Do I just have 15 guests over here, so we're using way more water than I normally do? I always find that is when people come to visit. I run a dishwasher more than I normally do. So it gives people access to that, customers access to that, to their customers' usage and those types of things. And it allows us to find a leak way more quickly for everybody involved. So, like I said, actually I will find the URL to this YouTube video and send it to the group so you guys can see it, because I really wanted you to see that's the very powerful piece of this, is the customer portal. So additional benefits, allowing us to read them remotely, as we said. For some types of meters, it allows for a remote connect or disconnect. Those people that we have to shut off their water regularly, you can push a button. Now, that's not all the meters, it's certain meters, but it can be done.
It's a special meter and it has a built-in valve that remotely operates, and it can do complete shut-off or reduce it to a 1/4-inch stream. For those that may have a medical necessity to have drinking water available, but yet it reduces the flow so they can't take a shower, can't do that kind of stuff.
When people like move and you restart water, you can do it really quickly.
Again, gives us better data about the health of our distribution system. I know we talked earlier this year about the fact that we've got some water loss, and we're trying to figure out why. This actually will give us more real-time data to be able to determine if we are having leaks and get those leaks fixed more quickly. As I noted earlier, there's should be no additional cost to the customers. The project is built into the water rate model. Also, we have already replaced about a 1/4 of the existing meters.
All the meters are new and they're in the rotational process. It's the MXU, the transmitter units. There's 2 different versions. There's one called an R and one called an M. Think of it as English and Spanish. The M's are the fixed base that talk. The R's are not. We have about 1,700 of the roughly 5,000 change already to the M's. The vehicle-based unit, it can read both.
So that's the other thing, we can, as we build the towers, we can start to read some of those, but we don't have to change everything all at one time in order to make it functional. Does that make sense?
What happens to the guy in the truck, once you get them all switched over?
Oh, Russ has got a.
One of the things that, yeah, the guy in the truck for 2 days, right now, we're averaging, about 210, events a month. And that is, shutting the water off, turning the water back on, people moving in and out the same day. You still have to make a trip to read the meter, manually, and that's what this little device does, because we don't have a way to interrogate it from the office and get a reading automatically back. We're doing shut-offs. We're averaging about 28 shut-off disconnections for non-payment a month. So we're doing somewhere around 200 every month. And you take 2 days out, so there's 11 or 12 of these every day that have to be done. And it takes about a half hour per day per event. And you only have about 6.5, 7 hour usable hours in a working day. So his day is almost full of this, in addition to repairing broken wires, fixing leaks in meters, changing meter box lids, and other customer service requests that we have. We're out of time. You know, the time constraint is there. By going to this automated, we gain the 2 days back. We gain all of the readings back for people moving in and out at the same time. And we reduce that 200 number down to about 50. There'll still be contacts and stuff, but it allows us, as the city continues to grow, and the number of events that we have to deal with, setting new meters, fixing things, the same person can do more work. Does that make sense? That person repurposed back into doing the work they're doing now, but just has the capability of doing it. We don't have to supplement it with additional people to stay caught up.
Other questions?
So we will be back to the city council in November. We will be going through a sole sourcing process because of the type of meter that we have to have in order to make this all work. So we'll come into the council with a public hearing at that stage of the day, but we wanted to give you a heads up about what it was that we were talking about before we got to that hearing stage, in case there were any questions or concerns.
Cool, thank you, we'll wait to hear more.
For just perspective, first generation,
There you go.
the now generation.
Or that.
This meter's 100 years old.
This is
have like
this is the one that was in that first video.
video.
That I was gonna
It came out of the ground, so if you can imagine trying to read that in the dirt, in the rain, with the water.
All right. All right, next on our list is item 11. This is an executive session, so I think we can, shut off the camera. We'll move into our next, and I've got a script to read that I will read in just a moment.